Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Now that we have a critical mass of attendees, let's dive in. My name is Colleen O'Gorman, and I'm the community manager here at All In Together. And we are so excited to have Jamie Klein with us. She is the founder of Inspire Human Resources, and she'll be leading us in a conversation about respect at work, evolving cultures and leadership in the era of Me Too. But before we get started, I want to give just a brief introduction to who we are and what we do at All In Together. Oh, sorry, we're having a quick problem with our slides. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. So All In Together, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we work to equip American voting age American women with the action-oriented civic education they need to become leaders in their communities. And we've been around for about 4 years, but recently we've been able to expand our reach due to the generosity of Gretchen Carlson, whose Gretchen Carlson Gift of Courage Fund has allowed us to launch the Gretchen Carlson Leadership Initiative in the last few months. And through GCLI, we've been able to we're going to 9 cities across the nation this year, where we're tailoring our civic education workshops to women who have experienced some form of gender-based violence, whether that's domestic violence or sexual harassment or sexual assault. We are bringing our civic education workshops around the country to give them the tools they need to raise their voices about an issue that they've been affected by personally. And what we found in the 3 cities we've been to so far, including Dallas, Minneapolis, and the greater New York area, is that women who have experienced these challenges around gender-based violence are incredibly motivated and eager to share their stories in order to help other women not experience the same sort of challenges. And so we are so excited for Jamie Klein to be joining us to help us continue this conversation about gender-based violence and to talk specifically about sexual harassment in the workplace. Thanks so much for joining us, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to partner with All In Together. And today's session will be a rich experience, and I look forward to your questions and hearing at the end. We're going to review the topics on our next slide. And before we do that, I just ask that you all take this moment to turn off any distractions. It is so rare that we pause during our busy workday to invest in our own learning and broaden our perspective. So invest in yourself, indulge, and join this dialogue for the next 60 minutes. And we'll have time at the end for questions. So clearly, if you have any questions to add to the conversation, you can go ahead and post those. Great. And as always, during the Q&A, we just want to, of course, respect each other's perspectives. So in terms of our agenda, what we're going to cover is the rise of the Me Too movement and the impact on our lives. We'll then look at a public service announcement from the RAIN organization and discuss ideas of how to react to sexual harassment as it occurs. I then want to share ideas and take thoughts and tools and share with you things you can easily implement, like implement this afternoon, real things that you can do to kind of change the way that you respond if harassment happens to you, or you find that you are a bystander and you're around someone who is unfortunately the victim of harassment. And then we'll close with Colleen talking about ways that we can really unite and share a policy update. And then of course we'll close at the end with questions. So let's take a look at what work life is like in 2018. The reality is that we're spending more time at work than we are at home with family and friends, whether we're at work physically, in transit, attending professional or social commitments, or logging in or checking email at home. I know I myself sometimes find myself with my iPhone on my nightstand. Work is just everywhere. And it's just become easier over time for these lines to get blurred as we're building more and more interpersonal connections while at work or in work mode. And this impact for some has been a struggle to really maintain work-life balance. And clearly some are handling those blurred boundaries better than others. But the statistics speak for themselves that 1 in 3 women have been sexually harassed. And we'd like to take a closer look at some of those numbers. So as the Me Too movement takes hold, account after account of harassment has been made, and in many cases toppled male leader after male leader. And it's important to pause and really quantify the scope of this movement. So overall, this study, and the one that we're sharing with you here, is from an organization called Stop Straight Harassment. They found that 84% of women and 43% of men say that they have experienced sexual harassment or assault over their lifetime. Among these findings, 77% of women and 34% of men surveyed say that they experienced verbal sexual harassment. 51% of women, 17% of men surveyed say that they experienced unwanted sexual touching. And the numbers just give me pause. And I know many of you received the handout before today's session. This is even just a moment to just jot down any notes there and really reflect that, what is your impression of all of this? I know it really stopped me in my tracks. I'd love to take a look next at kind of the rise of the Me Too movement. It can feel sometimes that the issues surrounding sexual harassment came out of the blue. This slide attempts to show that this story is not new. We took a quick snippet of time from 2016 until today and really looked at it. Back in 2016 that Tarana Burke, an American civil rights activist, she created the phrase to raise awareness of the pervasiveness of sexual abuse and assault in society. Fast forward, Bill Cosby's Michigas came to light in 2014. 2017, we see that ripple effect where Alyssa Milano really reignited the Me Too movement. And then Ashley Judd, of course, bravely came forward accusing Harvey Weinstein. That piece ran in the Times, and 84 women to date and counting have come forward. The consequences of Mr. Weinstein's actions have included being removed from his position at the Weinstein Company, facing civil cases with several accusers, and the New York Police Department, as well as the London Police, having to open criminal investigations, which are currently in progress. Now, since 2017, the story after story has come to light, and as of January 2018, there have been 120 accusations of high-profile sexual misconduct reported in the media. It goes on and on. Twitter confirmed to NBC News that over 1.7 million tweets, including the hashtag #MeToo, have occurred with 85 countries that have had at least 1,000 Me Too tweets. The fact has been felt industry-wide: entertainment, government officials, financial services, retail banks, churches, media, fashion, food service, retail, healthcare professional services, and it was just last week that the Times reported the forestry area of the government has their own issue of harassment. Nothing is sacred anymore. And one of my team and I have spent so much time since January looking for quantifiable data to truly show how this impacts the bottom line, because I think that sometimes we need to speak in numbers to really get our business leaders to really pay attention. And the one piece that we keep on coming back to is Wynn Resorts stock plunging more than 10% after the Wall Street Journal reported allegations that their billionaire CEO, Steve Wynn, had engaged in sexual misconduct for many years. And one thing that was really striking to me about the case with Wynn is that he received an honorary degree from University of Pennsylvania, and Penn bravely made the decision to go ahead and pull that honorary degree. And in that decision, they went back and they pulled their honorary degree from Cosby. So interesting to note that his situation surfaced in 2014, and all these years he kept that honorary degree. But the consequences for sexual harassment are much more severe. They're faster, they're more measurable than they were in the past. Also interesting to note that Harvey Weinstein had received an honorary medal from Harvard, and they pulled that in the December timeframe. So, as we pause and look at this timeline, I want you to just really reflect, and again, you can take notes in your handout. What is unusual? This type of openness and willingness to report harassment was not always the case. So we're going to spend a lot of today looking forward, but I just want to pause on the historical attitude. So, 1 in 3 women report harassment, which I said 71% of those instances never get reported. And I was speaking with a lawyer on Monday who said that the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's reports that they get, the incidents that they get, the highest volume of types of incidents is retaliation, higher than harassment. So just think about that. more than we're even getting those reports to the EOC on harassment, we're getting reports of retaliation. And why is this? Because historically, women have not felt safe coming forward. They've not always been believed. And the sense was that they could potentially lose their job. And what we see is many times there is retaliation, that this historical attitude is real. It has been faced. And, on a personal note, my company, really since Matt Lauer's exit in late November, we've really been just heads down on this and just trying to create, safer place for women, box store to boardroom. We just want everyone to be able to show up, do their job. And, I've heard countless stories of women just sharing their truth with me. And, stories, for example, of women who said, Jamie, I came forward and I spoke my truth that I had been harassed. And the company, which is a best place to work, award-winning company, they did the right thing. They did an investigation. They eventually exited the predator. They exited this very senior leader that harassed me. But when we then looked at what was next for my career after a long career at this company, they said, we are so sorry, but the only position, because we can't have you go back and work with that old department. It's too physically painful for you, emotionally painful. Let's find another spot. But the other spot that's available right now, it's at a more junior role. So you can keep your job at the company and we'll keep your comp the same. You can keep a job, but we need you to go to a more junior role. And so this particular woman said, okay, I'm so broken inside, okay, fine, I will take that. But she said that now that months have passed, Jamie, she said, let's just talk about the facts. It's a demotion. It's a more junior role. I've worked so hard to get that senior role, and now I had to take one with less clout, less voice, less ability to really impact the culture and impact teams and impact the growth of the business. So that story sticks with me, and I think it is probably one of countless people who have historically found themselves in the same situation. And I just want to, again, underscore, this is a best place to work company. They truly did the right thing. Investigation, check. Exited the predator, check. Kept your comp the same, check, check, check. But there are realities, and I often think about all the women who were impacted by Harvey Weinstein. Where are those women now? Many of them ended up having to switch careers or go into different professions. So just something to really think about, that historically women have very much been alone, but things have shifted. So what I want to do is really talk about what has shifted. If we reflect on this timeline, the reality is sexual harassment, it's not about sex, it's about power. And many of those accused were in positions of influence, in positions of power. And I want to share an example. Again, I mentioned the U.S. Forest Service. The trees, the forest, my goodness, it even happens there. 34 women were interviewed by NewsHour, and it reported widespread misconduct, a culture of harassment and retaliation. And the head of the U.S. Forest Service stepped down at the beginning of March, just this month, and in the announcement, it was stated that they were looking for ways, just to make way for new leadership. That is how they handled it. That is just the message, that they were making ways for new leadership. There's not a real discussion in many organizations about the fact that power is abused. It's not called what it really is. And what we want to do is think about how we can mobilize, how we can create diversity and understanding in leaders, in managers, in heads of civic organizations, heads of government. And when there is better diversity of gender across power, the results are always better. First Round Capital, a venture capital firm, reports that its investments in companies with female founders have posted a 63 better return than men-only firms. And that was a piece that I always refer to. It was a piece that was in the New York Times back in December. So it really is about the power. And we also need to build our own toolbox to manage these unfortunate situations that happen in real time. So, we're going to view a public service announcement. It is one of a set of 4 public service announcements that were created by David Schwimmer. You might remember him from Friends, one of the great shows of all time, and writer and director Segal Avon. These PSAs are now running in the New York City cabs, and they launched a campaign called #That'sHarassment to show and illustrate what harassment really looks like. It is often gray, it often creeps up on us. when we're least expecting it. So if you'll bear with us, this is about a 4-minute clip, but it really speaks volumes.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I can't find the McGinnis file. I keep losing it. I mean, I don't know. Is it me?
No, I don't know. Hold on. Don't be silly. Oh, that's weird.
Right? It keeps disappearing.
Okay, hold on. We're going to find it. Just give me 1 second.
Starving. Haven't eaten since lunch.
Ah, here it is.
Where?
I'm just going to drag it to your desktop for now.
What?
It was in the damages file. It didn't have its own file like the rest of the families in the lawsuit. But I'm just going to organize this tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Oh, thanks, my
Oh,
dad.
really, you're very sweet.
Thank you. All right. If you're done, I'm going to get going.
Oh, yeah. Where are you headed?
No, we're just home.
Well, I'll take you.
Oh my goodness, no, don't be silly.
No, it's no problem. I'm out of here.
No, it's fine. It's
No, I'll drop you.
I'm 4 stops away in the queue. I'm really fine.
Well, you don't get bothered on the train?
No, I put in my headphones and I listen to my music and then,
Nice.
yeah, I just go in my own little world. It kind of clears my head. It's nice.
Actually, you know what? That sounds really nice. No, I should probably join you on the train. Clear my head. Get one of those splitters, headphone.
Oh, yeah.
So you're happy here? Everything good? You're
Oh,
happy
wow,
here?
yeah, for sure, yeah. I've been great.
You're comfortable? Everyone treating you right?
Yeah, everybody's been just great. I feel really lucky to be here,
Good.
so, yeah.
Well, I'm really glad we chose you.
Me too.
Even though, there was, a contingency that were like, they wanted someone older with more experience. It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes.
Right.
I was about to move with my parents and right before, so this saved me. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. No, I just want you to know that I really believe in you.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you what?
I'm sorry. I have a boyfriend.
No, that's okay. I'm married. I was just trying to show you how much I appreciate you. I do.
Yeah.
I do. I really do.
I just don't know if I'm kind of comfortable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, I don't want to make you uncomfortable.
No,
that's not my style.
I know. It's fine. So I'm gonna.
I can see it's not fine. You're not fine. Listen, I want things to be comfortable between us.
No,
okay?
it's okay.
No, I feel it's not. I feel it's not okay, and I really am sorry. I want to make it okay.
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 Are we good? Nothing happened.
No.
Nothing happened. All right. I was showing. You know what it was? I just want to show you how great you are, how good you are.
Thank you. Okay.
And that's all. Okay. We're good. We're friends.
We're friends.
Okay. Come on. Let's have a hug.
I don't think that's right.
No. Let's end this properly. Come on.
Okay.
Here. This is how we end things properly. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's harassment, and that's how it happens. It can be that abrupt. And what we saw in this scenario called the boss, where the lawyer working late is completely inappropriate with his assistant, is that he uses that power differential. Let's go ahead and break down these two scenes. So it's important to notice that the power differential is set up when he starts making comments. You're really happy here, right? Everything good? And then he goes on. There was a contingency that, wanted some older folks with more experience. He adds, it's a big responsibility. And then there's the salary. So immediately in this scenario, a power differential is established. All of us are taught to be polite and agreeable when we start a new job, but this leader takes advantage of this in this scenario. Another common technique that harassers will use is start with inappropriate but relatively benign comments. In this case, it was about, do you want to ride home? Oh, you ride the subway? Riding the subway with you might be a fun thing to do. This allows the leader here to claim that he was just joking. He's giggling while saying it, right? They're also, this is the way that harassers, they kind of test to see what they can get away with. And then he does the unthinkable. He kisses her, he leans in. And after he kisses her, he says, I was just trying to show you how much I appreciate you. So let's talk about her response to this situation. So when he says, I believe in you, and she thanks him, he then touches her earring and says, these are cool. And then when he leans in for the kiss, what I want to think about is ways that we could strengthen a response. And again, some of us on the phone might just, or on this webinar, you can channel it and kind of think about, how would I keep myself safe at work? How would I make sure that I stay away from these situations? But for those of you on this webinar that are in situations of leadership, that lead organizations, or might be in human resources, these are great things to kind of share with your broader organization, with your leadership team, to help them have stronger responses. So, for example, when she's taken by surprise, right? And one thing that we're recommending to folks is to develop a script, kind of have a mental preparation of what you would do and say if a coworker ever made you feel uncomfortable. And this mental preparation can make responding to sexual harassment more automatic and give you that increased confidence. So while I can't give you the script, it is such a personal thing for you as an individual as well for your work environment. Think of what that script was. Another thing that you can think about is to make it plain that no one is allowed to touch you without your permission. And then excuse yourself and just simply say, I need to go to the bathroom. And that tip is actually from the founder of the Me Too movement and the Senior Director of Girls for Gender Equity, Tarana Burke herself. Another thing to think about is if someone does cross the line and do the unthinkable, in this case, the lawyer leaned in and kissed her, to just simply say, you're aware that you just sexually harassed me, right? And then simply walk away and just contact management. Whether management at your organization is a leader, someone who mentors you, human resources, just simply walk away and immediately contact management. I want you to take a moment, again, you can just reflect or write in your handout, what would you do if you were in this situation? And think through your response, think through ways that you could even strengthen the response that you might have had before you got on this call. Know that you can take back your power, you can call out, that was harassment, you just harassed me, right? And get yourself to safety, get yourself out of that room. So what I want to do is switch gears and talk about some actions that we can take to create more inclusive and safe work environments for everyone. Again, from box door to boardroom, we just want to create safe places to work. So having a proactive and positive approach is the key to creating that culture. And again, many of you on this webinar are in leadership roles where you are the stewards of that culture. And we want to create these cultures where people can live and work. So let's review some actions and tools that we can add to our personal toolkit as well as our organization's toolkits. I think we need to start with self. And we've all had experiences in our past, ones that we've either reported or self-managed. And I think just to start with self is important, and to kind of process any personal anger that you have for not being heard perhaps, and begin to find the middle. because for you to be equipped for kind of this era of Me Too and to help yourself move forward and organizations move forward, kind of processing that anger is important. And that could be a physical approach, whether it's exercise or yoga. You could do internal processing, journaling, or creating some type of art. My personal favorite is to write down things that make you angry, tear it up into pieces, and then literally like put it down the garbage disposal. Or there are other ways, but to really kind of manage and just be mindful of that, that you're dealing from the emotions, perhaps from a current situation versus a past experience. Again, now that you've kind of invested in self, the next thing to do is really be open and honest with others. And because trust doesn't build itself. And I'll share a quick example. I got a call recently from a leader who's a male. He said, Jamie, I need your help. He said, I have a operating committee. It's 5 men, 5 women. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm all about gender equality. I've got, a mix of genders. And the other day, I said to a bunch of the females, all of my direct reports, all C-level people, I said to a bunch of the females, girls, what's your take? Girls, what do you think? And one of the women, who is a C-level person, looked at him and said, could you please stop calling us the girls? And he said, Jamie, my face went white as a ghost. I was mortified. He said, how do I go back into my Monday morning leadership meeting and even face this group? What do I do? And I said to him, well, first, you're incredibly self-aware. Secondly, I would just kick off the meeting and just say, I just want to thank you for holding up a mirror. I have a feeling I've been calling you girls for a long time, wasn't aware of it, didn't realize it. Thank you for letting me know. I only had positive intent, but thank you for letting me know how this came across. That's exactly the type of honest dialogue that I want in this organization, and let's just move forward. But that's really what it's all about. It's just about calling out what doesn't feel comfortable. And he didn't harass her, he didn't break a law by calling her girl, but I bet that she had been harboring that yuck for quite some time. And let me tell you about yuck. What happens with leaders, senior, high potential, high performers that feel yuck, they eventually work elsewhere, right? They vote with their feet. They don't stay at organizations for a long time where they feel uncomfortable, where they don't feel honored. So if there was ever a time to have these conversations and bring things to the open, to just heal a culture and move forward, boy, it is now. So being open and honest with one another is key. Most importantly, we need to continue to build relationships. And it is more than ever to invite the men to be our allies and men to engage. So we need everyone at the table. We need everyone to help build stronger bonds between colleagues and to foster mentorship between male and female subordinates. And again, I've gotten countless calls from leaders who have said, Jamie, you've got to help me out. I've got male leaders who say that they don't want to help us with our Q1 kickoff to be mentors of females. They are nervous to be mentors. They don't want to be in a conference room with the door shut. They don't want to do dinner and drinks. Nobody wants to ride an Uber with a female anymore. Like, I'm hearing some men say that they don't feel like they're nervous to hire women. So that is a great, that I appreciate people's honesty, that they're talking about this. It is real, and if it's what people are feeling, we need to be having these conversations. But let's talk about how we can really set up men as allies. We want to purposely take an active role in developing the careers of women on our teams and ask senior level people to get involved more than ever. And no one talks about this more than Sheryl Sandberg and her whole Lean In movement. But we want to actually put the focus back on diversity in leadership. That creates greater returns, greater ideas. All the research shows that gender equality tends to have the better investments, the better outcomes. And we want to go ahead and make sure that gender equality exists. But to do that, we need to look for opportunities to partner with senior women to help lead the way, have senior women kind of coach men who might be uncomfortable, and help them figure out how they can be allies and really learn from one another's experience. And this is just kind of no nonsense, but we need to all take personal responsibility to carry ourselves in the most professional ethical, and consistent manner. So when I get those calls from leaders, or I'm facilitating a leadership class and people kind of speak their truth that, it's Q1, Jamie, it's performance season, we're having all of our kind of quarterly check-ins on annual, performance reviews and comp, and I've got all these meetings with women coming up and I'm nervous, I just say, then book a glass conference room, leave the door open if you're meeting with them, and if you're going to talk to someone over dinner, make it lunch. Like, just meet with them during daylight hours, and let's just kind of keep on mentoring and coaching and sponsoring those women. Let's not get stuck because there are certain behaviors that we need to just be mindful of. It's like no one ever got fired for, saying to a woman, great haircut, right? No one ever got fired for saying to a woman, I think, we need to also just check in on just kind of like the office banter and the way that we communicate with women. And I think that if your conversation with females is equally balanced with, hey, Sally, you're a ninja with the numbers, you're great at sales, you have fantastic, executive presence, it's fine to say, Sally, great haircut. But here's the reality. Let's do a check-in. With your male colleagues, are you commenting on cufflinks, ties, and socks? If the comments towards them are more about their skill sets, just again, this is a great time to just do a check-in on your culture. So back to mentoring, mentoring relationships can have a huge impact on career. And those with mentors, studies show, are more likely to get promoted and sponsored for new opportunities. So what we want to do is make sure that things continue to move in the right direction, and that more than ever, women are getting mentored, because the bottom line is it's like planting a seed that will grow. And fast forward years down the road, you will have more senior leaders that are female. You will have that gender equality at the top of the house. And that is very much where we want to go. So we've covered several actions and tools in today's conversation. I want to emphasize 3 that can help everyone move forward in a positive and proactive way. So folks on this call who are taking the time from their busy work day to invest in this they're the front line as far as I'm concerned. And it's really about how we help our organizations that we're a part of move forward, and that we really lead the way. So in doing so, a couple of things to keep in mind are that report issues when you observe or experience them. It's a little bit like after 9/11, there was a whole campaign, see something, say something, right? If you see something happen to someone else and you are a bystander, that does nothing. You are also part of the problem, right? And that's the message that we want to have. We very much want everyone to call out any inappropriate behavior and nip this in the bud. We want to stay engaged. We also want to focus on building relationships. Again, like I said, fostering mentorship programs, not avoiding each other. We need to relate and engage and make sure that good comes from working in this Me Too era. So with that, I am excited for us all to now hear from Colleen, who can talk to us a bit about several policy updates that All In Together is behind.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for that presentation. You gave such great action-oriented information. I'm really excited about all of that. But just to switch gears a little bit, I know Jamie talked a lot about what you can do in your specific workplace to combat sexual harassment and improve your culture around gender equality and respect in the workplace. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about policy changes in the Me Too moment. Right now in Washington, D.C., there are bills on the floor of both the House and the Senate that aim to hold both individual perpetrators and corporations more broadly accountable for sexual harassment that takes place in those corporations. So the first one I want to talk about right now is the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Harassment Act. So this bill was introduced in December. It was pioneered by journalist and advocate Gretchen Carlson, and it is bipartisan, which means that there are co-sponsors on both sides of the aisle who are excited about and supporting this bill. And the main goal of this bill is to eliminate forced arbitration clauses in employment agreements. Essentially, what a forced arbitration clause does is it silences survivors by forcing cases of sexual harassment to be dealt with in secret hearings rather than in an open court of law. And oftentimes, people, when they get a job, when they sign contracts, they don't even necessarily know that they have a forced arbitration clause, but even if they do, right, it's hard not to have a forced arbitration clause when that's the policy of the company. And essentially, by making it illegal to have forced arbitration in contracts for sexual harassment, this makes more transparency and it allows survivors to come forward and have their stories heard. Likewise, another bill that really emphasizes the importance of transparency to fight sexual harassment in the workplace is the Sunlight and Workplace Harassment Act. And this bill would require public corporations to publicly detail any harassment allegations and settlements. So like forced arbitration clauses, how that keeps instances of sexual harassment secret, when public corporations don't have to make public allegations and settlements of harassment, it makes it easier for them to protect harassers and perpetrators of sexual harassment, and it makes it more difficult to hold these corporations accountable for their culture. Another really important piece of the Sunlight and Workplace Harassment Act is it doesn't just apply to sexual harassment. It would actually require reports on settlements based on complaints related to any kind of identity discrimination, whether that's on the basis of race, gender, or what have you. So both of these bills are focusing on how do we make it more transparent so that when cases of sexual harassment do happen, that they're handled and the culture is fixed. So as a citizen advocate, right, these are policies that are being debated on the national stage in Washington, D.C., but there are still a lot of things you can do at home as a citizen to raise your voice and voice your opinions about these important issues. And at All In Together, we try to give you the tools to make this as easy as possible. So one way to raise your voice on this issue is to visit the All In Together Action Center. As you can see, this is a picture of what it would look like when you log on. The Action Center is really your one-stop shop for raising your voice on the issues that matter to you. In this case, it can be about sexual harassment, but really you can raise your voice on any issue that matters to you on this platform. And as you can see, there are buttons where you can write your member, you can share your story over email, you can call them, you can even schedule a visit by getting their contact information for their scheduler. And the easiest way to use the Action Center is when you log in and give your zip code, it actually will tell you who your legislators are. So right now we're logged in as someone from White Plains, New York, which is where our last in-person workshop was. But you see we have senators from New York and also the local congressperson and the state representatives. And essentially when you plug in all of that information, you get their specific contact information. So it's super easy to visit their website, to call them, to write them, or even schedule a visit with their scheduler. And so the Action Center is one really easy way. Just take 5 minutes out of your day and voice your opinion about sexual harassment, for example. And like the Action Center, there are also other ways where you can make it as easy as possible to take action on the issues that you really care about. Our first suggestion is to just save your representatives' phone numbers for both their DC and their state offices in your cell phone, and also to follow them on social media and sign up for their mailing list. So after you visit the Action Center and you find out all of their contact information, just save it in a place where it's easy for you to find it. So, if you're walking from the parking lot to your office, take that time to call your representative. It's super easy. Another way to remind yourself to stay engaged is to actually set a time in your calendar. If you schedule 30 minutes every week for advocacy time, that could really add up to make a really big impact. And just like any other meeting, if you actually put it in your calendar, you're more likely to actually hold yourself accountable and make sure that you do it. And finally, I know there are a lot of you who are logged on today who are leaders in your community or in your office, and it's really important to encourage your team or your community to also take these actions to stay engaged around issues of sexual harassment. So if you're a leader, share what you've learned today and encourage your team to raise their voices around issues of sexual harassment, whether that's setting a time to have a lunch and learn around this subject, or to even send them calendar invites to have advocacy time as well. These are just super easy to amplify your impact by engaging other people in your community or in your workplace. So with that, we're really excited. I know we have some questions from our attendees on the webinar. So to get started, we have a question from Nancy G. She asks, what does Jamie think about the backlash from the Me Too movement? She recently read an HBR article stating some men now feel uncomfortable or don't want to hire women.
Hi, Nancy. I read that article too. The backlash is real. it is real. I think that there are many male leaders that I'm with also who speak about a nervousness that wasn't there before. And what I don't know how this exactly is going to play out, but what I do know is this. I look at two examples, which is the Today Show, co-anchored by Matt and Savannah. Matt, as we know, exited right after Thanksgiving, or right around Thanksgiving. That particular example, and I know that it's only a 2-seat situation, it opened up space. And what it did was it opened up space, and now we have Hoda. I think of Mario Batali, who in the December timeframe needed to exit both his show and his restaurants. And I don't know what the situation is in terms of who's leading his empire of restaurants, but I know in terms of his show, there's now a team of people, one of whom is a female that I see. So I think that what is happening is going to be net positive, in that more space will be opened up for women to be considered, and they have to be wildly qualified, high potential women, but for women to move into positions that are vacated. But in terms of the backlash, that is real. I think that we need to be having those honest conversations. And I mentioned that quick example with that leader that said, Jamie, what do? I messed up. I called them girls. Like, it was so awkward. And I just said, go back and say, I messed up. And man, I'm not going to do that again. Thanks for making me aware. And for, again, the leaders that are nervous to be alone with a woman at dinner, for those leaders, I'll say things like, obviously grab lunch with them, meet during daylight hours. But I also think it's just like rethinking. It's like, if you're going to invite, people, like invite a whole mix of people. It doesn't need to be one-on-one. I think, look, the pendulum has swung. People are walking on eggshells. I think that things are going to normalize, but in the meantime, people who are engaged in this dialogue can be leaders and just calling it out and helping everyone just rethink what these new norms are.
Great, thanks so much, Jamie. Another question that we have from Barbara is, what is HR's role in tackling this problem? Has HR failed in any way to prevent this, and what more must be done?
So hi Barbara, I could speak for hours on this, but in brief, I see HR as the first responder. So when a person comes to your office to say that they feel that they've been harassed, they are looking for HR's words and body language to signal if it is safe. And they're also closely looking for what happens next. Not every HR person is ready to get the call. And for my HR colleagues who are joining us today, if you have not yet received the call, you will someday. It's like being a leader. Like, at some point you'll manage someone who comes in late every day, and you always have to be ready for how you're going to manage someone with a tardiness issue. If you work in HR, you will at some point be approached by someone who has not felt safe at work. And what you want to do is be ready with your organization's response. And it's so personal for each organization, but when, I know my firm's talking to folks, what I typically recommend that they do is they quickly consult with an employment attorney. I think that this is a moment in time that every HR person who is in a situation where someone's come forward really needs to have great counsel and great advice, because we spoke about the timeline, we spoke about how things are moving faster, how consequences are different. But what I will say, and I'm not an attorney, what I will say is that people are innocent until proven guilty still. And I think that it's really important that as HR professionals, we slow things down, and that if someone is accused of something, that we do what we always are supposed to do. And we do a thorough and fair investigation where we look at a 360 circle of people that were, that are involved, and ask a series of questions, look for themes, and make a recommendation. And we've had leaders say, someone was accused of something, Jamie, I want to exit them, like this week, like, can you help me exit them? And what my firm has said is, we need to slow down, we need to confirm what occurred. And in some cases, certain leaders need to take a leave of absence, right? Like, they need to take a leave of absence while a proper investigation is done, like it should always be done. But I think we need to slow things down. The other piece for HR departments, and your question is a good one, have HR departments failed? think HR is always in a tricky spot where they're supposed to find this magic middle between protecting the employee and protecting the company. And I think there's a whole, it's like physicians. It's like if you want surgery done, there's a whole continuum of physicians that could do your or like could be your caretaker. I think there's a whole range of HR professionals out there. And what you want to do if you're an HR person is really, like this afternoon, really make sure that you have a zero tolerance policy for discrimination and harassment in your office. If you have not, email me, like you need to have one right away. Secondly, you want to make sure that you've done some type of an education for your organization about what the conduct should be at work. Third, you want to make sure, no matter how small your organization is, that there are multiple reporting channels, because people might not always feel safe going to HR. In some companies, they might not feel safe going to the founder. You need to have multiple reporting channels, and you need to make sure that there is a no retaliation policy in place. So again, I could go on for hours, but HR is the first responder. Your words and body language set the tone, and those are important things to keep in mind.
Great. And Jamie, you mentioned even that these tips apply for small organizations, but we did get a question on other tips on setting sexual harassment policy or reporting structure in small companies of about 12 or fewer employees, where everyone knows everything that's going on anyway, and there is currently no quote unquote perceived risk.
Oh, everyone has to, every organization could find themselves at risk. And this is the moment to really insulate your organization from risk. So for the companies that literally have 12 people, where probably you're all hanging out after hours and in the office, and it's very, very blurry. To that organization, I say, at a bare minimum, what you want to do is make sure that there is a basic policy, everyone's aware of it. I'd imagine that there is an office manager or maybe an HR person who is kind of looking after the people stuff. Perhaps you want to grab a WeWork space or a spot that is off-site that, from time to time you can hold office hours in if people want to talk about anything, ways to improve the culture, ways to improve team building. Like, you just want to begin to plant the seeds to create a culture where you're open to feedback, and you very much want to make sure that people feel that there is some safe person in the organization that they can talk to. So I want to make sure I'm answering your question completely, but I think in small companies, there's also that piece of where everyone knows everything. That's real. And it's often at those companies that the romantic relationships bud very quickly, again, because you're in build mode and you're typically spending more time there than you are at home with family and friends. So just want to make sure there's a policy and that people are clear on what those rules are. And most importantly, leadership signals how these things should be handled. And the smaller the organization, the more important that top levels behavior towards any marginalized group is perceived, right? This topic is about gender, but there should never be any marginalized group that is made to feel unsafe or like the other. So whether you're at a 12-person organization or you're on this call and you are part of a multinational company that's in 18 countries, you want to make sure that your leadership team is doing all that they can now to create a safe place to work for all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamie. And it looks like we have time for one more question. Nancy asked if we had any gut feeling on a timeline for the policies we discussed earlier. She said she knows these things take a long time in DC. And Nancy, you're absolutely right. But I do think it is a little bit challenging to know a precise timeline, just because, a lot of the legislative processes do get complicated. And even if we consider all of the other really pressing issues that are in front of Congress right now, even today, a lot of students from elementary school all the way up through college are engaging in protests around what to do about school safety and guns. I know immigration with DACA expiring soon. There is a lot on the plate of our representatives right now. But if these are issues that you want to see moving forward, that's why it is so important to be calling your representatives about these issues, right? Because they're going to take action more quickly when they hear from the people they represent. And so even though it's hard to know what the timeline is, it's really important right now to keep in mind that there are thousands of bills that come before Congress every year, and only a tiny fraction of those ever get passed. So if these are policies that you would like to see passed. That's why it is super important to make your voice heard, to send emails, to call your congressman, to even schedule an in-person meeting to make sure that they know that this is something that's really important to the people they represent. Great, so thank you so much, Jamie, for your presentation, and thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. And please stay connected with us. We hope that this was just the beginning of a conversation about how we start to combat sexual harassment in the workplace. Our emails are on this slide. Feel free and please do follow us on social media, and we'll definitely be sure to stay in touch. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.